Hello friends! Welcome to Coding Garden with CJ. Welcome to Seedling School, where I will be reviewing submissions to the O1 front-end project. Hello everyone, look at all the drops. Welcome to the show. We've got Danielle on the leaderboard with a 92.29? Is that what that is? Very good. Or is that an 82? I don't know. Very good. So if you are not familiar with Seedling School, this is a thing that I started last week, but basically there's this front-end project that you, the viewer, can do, and we have 26 submissions. So today I'm going to be reviewing some of them, the ones that are finished. I'll be answering questions for ones that have questions, and also coming up with a code review checklist, because I know there's at least one. The very first submission is ready for a code review. They commented and said, hey, can you review my code? So what I want to do while I'm doing that is to come up with a list of all the things that I would check for when I'm doing a code review, so that it can be consistent when I review other projects as well. It is very cold where I am today. It's negative 5 degrees Celsius. And BeginBot just rated the channel with 10 viewers. Hello, BeginBot. Are you actually a bot, or are you a channel? Welcome to the stream. But yes, it is negative 5 degrees Celsius in Denver, Colorado. It's been snowing all night. He's a channel, cool. Well, welcome everyone. I am just getting started, and you probably missed it, so I'll mention it again. But I started this thing called Seedling School. It's not really a thing. It's only a thing because there's a GitHub repo for it. But if you go on github.com/coding-garden/seedling-school-01-front-end-project, these are project requirements for a front-end project that you, the viewer, can create and work on. Bots are people too. I guess that's true. I'm sorry, BeginBot. Welcome to the stream. And so far, there are 26 submissions. So today I'm going to be reviewing them, commenting on them. I've been commenting. You can see that quite a few of these have like pretty big comment threads. So I have been in my spare time commenting on them where I can. But today is going to be some dedicated time to do that. Let's say hello to everyone. Hello, Carlos. Welcome to the stream. Hello, Godless. Hello, VWeb. I'm doing pretty good. Like I mentioned, it's very cold here in Denver. That's why you can hear the heater is on. Normally I turn it off, but it's too cold to turn that off, so it's on right now. Hello, Harsh. Hello, Ben. Hello, Danielle. Hello, Isaac. ¿Qué tal? Nada. Todo bien. Yeah. Es muy frío. Muy frío. Mucho frío? Hello, Coding Pasta. Hello, Sabit. Hello, Phil Carbo. Hello, John. Hello, John D. Hello, CNS. Hello, Alana. Hello, Danielle. And thanks for the raid, BeginBot. Welcome to the stream. What were you working on? Are you a coding channel? Welcome, welcome. Hello, Julian. Hello, Art Matt Dink. Welcome. Hello, Domenico. Hello, Florin from Hamburg. Welcome to the stream. Hello, Jim. Yana saying it's negative 3C here too. Yeah, it's very cold. Alrighty, so I am going to start off with the very first submission that came in. Which is this non-Earthling news project submission. So basically the requirements for the project were that it has 2 pages. There's a landing page, and then there's an application page. The application page should take in some sort of user input, and then it should contact a third-party web API. So this submission decided to use the news API, and then they filtered it to only show news that's related to aliens and UFOs. So it's pretty fun, pretty cool. And what I'll do, I need to, I'm gonna be working on a code review checklist while I am reviewing the code. No, let's not. Yeah, I'll do it in there. So those of you can kind of help me review the code at the same time, and if you have suggestions for what should go on the list, we can add it. Let's call it code review checklist. And hello, Umheck. Yeah, so this is Umheck's submission, and thanks for tuning in. But yeah, you shouldn't be scared. Like I always say, you are not your code. You can always get better at coding, and that's the point of code reviews. So you should take none of this personally. All of this is purely suggestion and to help you get better at coding. Get your red pencils out. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, Jim is saying it would be cool to see how many people have used promises or async await. Well, we'll see in the code. Yeah, and I'm only going to review the ones that have asked for a code review because there are some people that didn't want a code review. Maybe they only want like a UI UX review. But Cassandra Goose here has explicitly asked for a code review, and you can see in the comment thread she did her submission. I gave her some feedback. She posted her wireframes. I said these look great. Go ahead and code it. She posted some screenshots of what it actually looks like. And then she made this comment 4 days ago. I'm a little behind. I'm sorry, Cassandra Goose. But who said, I've completed my features. I would love to steal a code review and a UI UX review. No rush. Thanks much. So that's what I'm going to do first. Let's catch up on the chat, and then we'll do it. Hace mucho frio. There we go. Thank you, John D. Hello, Nar. Yep, it's morning here. It's 8 a.m. Hello, Sarav. And hello, Nadir. Nar is asking, how long have I been coding? Professionally, 10 years. In general, close to 15 years. Hello, Take a Chance. Welcome back. This is the first time I'm doing these reviews live on stream. So I'll probably do them once every 2 weeks or once a week. The thing is, there are a bunch of submissions, and a lot of them are getting really close to being done. So pretty soon we might actually do just a general project review. And if people are open to it, we could do like a video chat, and they could basically do like a project presentation, which would be pretty fun. Yeah, so 10 professional years as a programmer. How to learn coding. There's a ton of free online resources. Definitely check out Free Code Camp. Check out the Odin project. Check out my channel. But yeah. Come on, Nadir. Hello. Free debugs. Welcome. So the idea is it's kind of just rolling reviews. So as these submissions come in, if there are ones that need reviews, I'm just going to, as long as I have the time and the resources, going to keep trying to review them. So you're welcome to start this project at any time. Yeah, if you really, really do want reviews, I would say start now. Because it could be like a month or 2 months from now. Maybe I'm not looking at this repo as much. I'm going to try to, though. My goal is to look at it often. Drinking some yerba mate for breakfast. Yeah, I'd love to take a chance. Cool. Hello, Damien from Poland. Welcome. Got myself a new build with the new Ryzen. Should arrive tomorrow. Nice. Yeah, I have like a Ryzen 5 in my streaming computer. Jorge, yeah, I'm going to take a look. So that's the other thing that I need to do is, so when a new submission gets added, it doesn't have any labels. And unfortunately, I've been pretty busy, so I haven't had a chance to take a look at it. But on this stream, I will review your submission, give you feedback, and if you've already gotten started, that's totally fine too. But I will do that, Jorge. And sorry for taking so long. And thanks for the follow, CSX Daniel. So can we submit any kind of project? For this one, no. It should follow the project requirements. So if you take a look at the GitHub repo, I'll share this really quick. This has many requirements. So there are goals for the project. There's a description of what you're going to build. There's example ideas. And then there is how to participate. So your project must meet these requirements to be submitted here. The plan is in the future, I'll do other kinds of projects. Like this project was very front-end focused, and where you could practice and use your skill, learn about third-party web APIs and practice contacting third-party web APIs. But in the future, I'll probably create a project description for more of like a full-stack project or something like that. So that's the plan. Yeah. Can I give tips about getting paid for freelance coding job like Fiverr or Upwork? No, because I've never done it. I've always worked for a company, and right now I work for a software consultancy. So it's kind of like being a freelancer, but I have the protection of a company around me because I still get to work on a lot of different projects. But yeah, I don't really have any advice for that. And hello, Daoud. All right, let's get into this. Our very first review is going to be of this project. So for those of you that are totally new to this whole thing, I'm going to I'll review her submission. We'll kind of go through the history of it, and then we'll look at the code. So the project name is Non-Earthling News. The project description is, get the latest news about our friends from outer space. Sourced from all over the web with easy sorting, filtering, and searchability, you will be able to find all the latest alien information you desire. Very cool. So If you are submitting yours or creating a submission, this project description here is kind of like an elevator pitch. Let's take a quick stretch. Quick stretch. I have the Red Dragon keyboard in my office upstairs. The one I'm using right now is not Red Dragon. Yeah. And I'm going to turn off the drop game because it's a little distracting. That's a good point, Take a Chance. Take a Chance is saying Fiverr and Upwork are not freelancing because technically Fiverr and Upwork take a cut. I don't know Laravel. I really mostly do deal with full stack JavaScript. Okay, but yeah, this project description is great. It's 2 sentences. It describes exactly what this application is going to do. I really like it. And in terms of the third-party web API, they're using this newsapi.org, which I guess if we just go to News API, it's an API that you can use that has results from all over 30,000 different news sources, which is pretty cool. And what they decided to do is basically make the request to the API to get all of these news articles and then pre-filter them to only show things that have like UFO or aliens or different things like that. Cool. So they submitted. Initially, the only feedback I had for them were that they needed to make their project description a little more thorough. So yeah, if we look at the her repo, we can see the project description file. So if you're submitting a project, this is what you would need to fill out. And the main thing that I wanted her to work on was the how will users interact with your website? Because really, this is you thinking through how is this application going to work? Like, what are the pages? How do they link together? How does the user interact with it? And you could you could easily just say the user will search for news, right? But that doesn't really describe how the app works and how it links together. So I asked her just to expand this little part a bit. And this says, users will land on a page with the description of the app, some cool visuals to help describe the app, and a button to enter the app. At the click of the button, the user can then go to a page that has the latest alien-related news in a scrollable format. They will be able to sort by date, filter by various tags and topics, and search. That's great. It's a great description about how users will interact. So this comment was just update that, and then you can get started. She got started. She created some wireframes. Wireframes are very low fidelity. You can see it's kind of just, it's filler text and boxes that describe where things are going to be laid out on the page. And then, oh yeah, she also had an update that the developer version of the API only gives snippets of the articles instead of the whole article. So one thing you'll want to do when you're trying to find a third-party web API is make sure that it has all the things that you would want it to have. And she thought she was going to get all of the article contents, but instead she's only getting snippets because it's the developer version. And I think the paid version costs quite a bit of money. So she didn't want to pay. But the workaround is there's just going to be a read more button at the end of each snippet. So instead of having like the full text here, there's like a button that says read more, and that will link out to the article. And then we can see she scaffolded the pages. There's the landing page, and then there's the news page. All right, so let's look at the website, and then we will take a look at the code. And for that, I'll probably clone the repo down. Where did it go? I lost it. Oh, here it is. Here it is. So here's the app. We can see it at nonearthlingnews.surge.sh. And here it is. Here's the landing page. So we can see today's date. We see the first daylight photo of, what are they? For the first photograph that shows unidentified flying objects from 1952. Very cool. Tired of sifting through pages upon pages of news articles you don't care about? Look no further. Get the latest news about our friends for outer space. Sourced from all over the web with easy sorting, filtering, and searchability, you'll be able to find all the latest alien information you desire. We are not alone. Okay, and if we click See Latest News, we're taken to the news page. That was a cool loading spinner. So in terms of UI and UX feedback, I really like that there's a loading spinner when something is happening in the background, because you don't want the page to just be blank for a second. Let me also add a UI review checklist. Yeah, Sarav, I'll get to your questions after we do this review, but yeah, I'm focusing on the review right now. Okay, loading indicators are shown when there is background processing. So let's say like API requests, calculations, etc. So that's one thing that I liked, and we can see it again if I refresh the page. For a split second, we see the spinner, and then we see the content itself. So I like that because it lets the user know that something's going on. Cool. And so now we're presented with the the app page. We can see non-earthling news. We have ways of sorting. So when I talk about user input, this is user input. So we can search. Is there any news about Tom DeLonge? I guess Tom DeLonge shows up in this one too. Tom DeLonge is the guitarist for Blink-182. He's way into aliens and UFOs. So yeah, so searching and filtering is pretty cool. What if I search for UFO? Very cool. So it filters the list. I'll say this is kind of like a stretch UI feedbacks. So like this isn't required. Not required, but nice to have. Is whenever we're either adding or removing things from a list in a UI, we could show some animations which make things less abrupt. Because you'll notice, like, if I remove the search term, it just instantly pops back up. But if we had some simple animations that kind of just fade out an article or fade it in, that would look nice. So let's just say, not required, but nice to have. Elements in a list fade out when leaving and fade in when appearing. And like I said, it's not required, but something like that would be easy to do. Cassandra Goose, our thing is heck in the chat. If you'd like to see the code that would be required to do that, let me know, and I might be able to add that. Let's see. So we can sort by latest. We can sort by popular. There we go. One bit of feedback for Cassandra, and actually let me do this. I'm going to keep a running list of feedback that I have for her in here as well. So I'm kind of doing double work, but eventually I'll just have a single checklist. So one point of feedback is show the loading indicator. Show the loading indicator when switching between sort values, because we can see, like, when the page loads, like it should default to latest, and when the page loads we see the loading indicator, but if we switch to popular, it kind of just sits there for a second and then they pop up. So it would be nice to see the loading indicator when switching the sort value. And then I'll also add it under nice to have. Whoa. Nice to have. So this is use animations when list items are entering and leaving. Cool. All right, let's keep on using the app. So the other thing that I haven't touched yet are these buttons here. So what happens if I click Area 51? Cool. So we only see things that I guess are from Area 51 news, or that are about Area 51. So that's not quite clear to me if this is a news outlet, because the rest of the buttons are news outlets. And it looks like this links out to Vice News, and then this one links out to The Cut. So that's a little bit confusing to me. So is the Area 51 button a news source filter or a content filter? 20 years coding challenge? What's that about? Take 20 years to do the challenge? I'm not going to do that. Yeah, so it seems a bit out of place from the rest of the buttons. And I think the other thing is I would like to see some visual indicator that I've clicked one of these filter buttons. So like if I click Gizmodo, yeah, that links to Gizmodo. If I click Vice News, we see the articles that are from Vice News. But I would maybe like the buttons to change color if that filter is active. So I'm going to add that as a UI feedback. It would be nice if the filter buttons changed color or size to indicate that they are active. Cool. But it's pretty sweet because we can say show only news from the Daily Star, show news from NASA. So I think that's another thing. So NASA is actually a topic because we can see when we filter by NASA, we're seeing news from Daily Star and A Mysterious Universe. So that makes it a bit clearer. So I'll say it right here. It looks like the NASA and Area 51 buttons are content filters and not news source filters. Seems a bit out of place from the rest of the buttons. Maybe have it on the next line? Or a different color? So that's my main point of feedback there is these two buttons are doing something slightly different than these two buttons. Cool. All right. And one thing that I'm interested in is like we can get into these weird application states, right? So right now I have filtered by Vice News. And then if I sort by latest, is it still filtered by Vice News? No, it's not. So whenever we change the sort, it doesn't keep the buttons that we've clicked. So I'll say that right here. When filter buttons are active, they do not... Heck is laughing. The sort restarts it. Yeah, okay. So when the filter buttons are clicked, they do not keep the sort in mind. This is okay if the sort buttons... Or sorry, if the filter buttons had some sort of visual indicator. And that might be the easiest thing to do is, okay, when you filter, that turns green, but then when you change the sort, it goes back to black, so I know that it's not being filtered by that anymore. Cool. Okay, so that's great. That's mainly all the UI feedback, and I'm just nitpicking. Like, this is a perfectly fine and usable website, but there are a few things we can do to make it better for the user. And what I'm curious is also if so I sort by popular. So let's say I search for Tom DeLonge. Cool. And then if I sort by relevant, does it keep the filter? If I search by latest, it does not keep the filter. So that's another point of feedback is when a search term is entered and sort is changed, maybe we should clear the search box. So I'll just say the Cassandra the Goose. Yeah, and we're about to look at the code. That's the next piece. So we looked at the UI, now we're going to look at the code. The search box is ignored after changing sort value. Cool. Awesome, yeah, and I'll catch up on the chat, but that's the main bit of UI feedback. I'll say that, actually, and I shouldn't just have negative things. I should also have positive things. So let's say, to improve. Things I like. I like the font choice. So we can see that the title font is actually a different font from the body copy or anytime you have a lot of text that's meant for reading. And so like this is like an all caps font and it looks really good for big titles, but the text itself is a different font. So I like the font, and let me add that to UI review. Fonts are consistent, or font choices are consistent. Title font, I'll say body font is good for reading, because there's a lot of text here, and so I want this to be a font that's good for reading. Cool, so I like the fonts. I like that it is, the overall style makes it feel like a newspaper. So that's cool. I actually do like the landing page. Let's take a quick stretch. So, yeah, I'll add this. Things I like. The landing page tells the user exactly what this app does. It's no frills. See the latest news. I love it. And then we go into it. And another point of feedback is the loading indicator. It looks like a crescent moon. Font choice. So I like the... I like that you use two fonts, one for the title and one for the body. So those of you that have a really hard time... oh, that's a good point, Coding Pasta. I actually didn't take into account responsiveness. We'll look at that next. But if you're new to fonts, you can go to fontpair.co. You know it's a good stretch when... Did something pop? I didn't hear it. But fontpair.co is a really good resource because they'll give you a title font and a body font, and then those fonts will usually link out to Google Fonts. Some of them are not free, but the majority of these are free, and so they're really good pairings of title fonts and body fonts. Like, this might have actually looked pretty cool on the... because it's like alien themed. I feel like a typewriter text gives it that Area 51 alien feel. And this it's like a monospace font, so yeah. But yeah, check out FontPair if you're new to font pairings. Okay. Oh! Yeah, and I'm gonna do... I will do a UI review for Josh, but congrats! Good luck! Everyone say good luck to Josh. They just got a call back from a recruiter. Good luck. All right, so let's try responsiveness and adaptiveness. So if I start to resize the page, yeah, so really probably the only thing that you need to change, oh, and the images stretch. So let's add this to our overall feedback for checking things. Page responds nicely to different screen sizes. So for this, I will say images resize accordingly. FontPair actually only has free fonts. Well, some of them aren't, because some of them link to Google Fonts, and then Google Fonts will link out to, like, I think it's called, like, Font Foundry or something like that, and those cost money. Images resize accordingly. Columns break at smaller screen sizes. We'll also say images maintain aspect ratio. Because we can see on here, when we resize, there's like a little bit of stretching that happens. Oh, actually, that looks really good. When I go that small, I'm okay with that. I think you might just increase your breakpoints, Cassandra, because when I'm here, I probably want the single column view. There were no cross-browser requirements, just really just Chrome, because that's what I'm going to be testing with. There were stretch features or stretch things if you wanted to do like IE9 support or something like that, you could. So yeah, my main point of feedback is we should actually go to the mobile breakpoint when we're on medium devices. I think that's my main point. And if we pull up the mobile simulator, let's see. Yeah, because like on an iPhone X, it has like a really high pixel density, so it actually shows up like that. Whereas if we look at it like on an iPhone 5, oh, it doesn't break. Interesting. I'll take a look at your CSS classes because I think you're using Bootstrap. Let's see. Yeah, I'll need to clone your repo down, but there might be something we can do to fix that because I think it's not taking into account the device size. And there's like a meta tag we can add if you don't have that meta tag. Cool, but that's a point of feedback there too. to improve. And then last thing on improve, max width. I think that's it, Rajith. We'll look at the code to see. Well, yeah, we'll look at the code to see what's happening, but I think it's something like that. So on mobile, I'll say, well, things I like. Screen resizing on desktop looks great. I would remove the medium breakpoint and only have the small and large, though. So my feedback for desktop is basically when we get right here, you should switch to a single column layout where the text goes underneath the image instead of waiting until we get there, because this looks good. And if we can get the same appearance on mobile, then you're good to go. Cool. So there's that, and then to improve on mobile, the breakpoints don't seem to work. Cool. Yeah, Free Debugs is asking, is it possible to change a route without reloading the page with vanilla.js like React Router DOM does? Yep. So you can actually tap into the hash change event and do all of that good stuff. So if you go to coding.garden/videos and search for vanilla MVC, or just search for this one, vanilla.js MVC, I actually build like a super tiny MVC framework and a router from scratch in this video. So if you check out this video, you can see how I do it, but it's really not that complicated. You just listen for hash change, and you basically just have one element on the page that you swap out the contents for. But it's absolutely possible to build a router from scratch. Cool. Cool. So I'm going to submit this UI feedback. Great work overall. A lot of the improvement points are I'm just gonna say that. Great work overall. Code review up next. Let's preview it. Does it look okay? All right. There's your UI feedback. And for the code review, let's pull this code down to my machine. Let's do this. Code review. Oh, let's call this project reviews. We'll make one for Cassandra Goose. That goes in there. We'll go in and we'll open up VS Code. And we will start with the README. Cool. So because this is a front-end project, I would say that it's probably it's a given that we just need to use some sort of static file server. But usually with the README, I like to see setup instructions or how to run things locally. So let's add that in our code review checklist. So the README is definitely part of the code review checklist. So we'll say the README includes instructions for running the project locally. It could be as simple as saying open index.html in Chrome to begin developing, but I would like to see instructions for running the project locally. Cool. Let's see. So we're going to start at index.html. We're going to start with an HTML code review. So we can see, yep, and it is missing the thing that I was thinking of. So we're missing this meta tag, which actually will help with the responsiveness on mobile. But we can see that they're bringing in Bootstrap, they're bringing in the custom fonts, and then they're bringing in the CSS. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use Light Server, which is just a local static file server that automatically refreshes when we change things. And we're going to go into mobile view. Well, we'll go into the app. Yeah, and we can see how it's not resizing. Let's see. Let me go 100%. Let's go to an iPhone X. But it's because we're missing this meta navigator viewport thingy. What do you got for us, CSX Daniel? That's the one. I was gonna search for it, but yeah, if you search MDN for viewport, you should be able to find it. You gotta spell it right. Viewport concepts. Maybe if we search for meta viewport. Here it is. Mobile viewports. So mobile devices come in all shapes and sizes with screens of differing pixel ratios. So the thing about an iPhone X is like there are a ton of, it has a very dense, it's very pixel dense. So even though we have these breakpoints, it's not happening on iPhone because it's almost the size of a very large screen, even though it's tiny. But if you add this meta tag, and it has this initial scale equals 1, it takes into account the fact that we're on a mobile device, and it should add the breakpoint should happen earlier. Let's take a quick stretch. Ugh. Yeah. Yes, that's a good point, Ben. And so I'll add it really quick so we can see what will happen. So if I add that there, and then I save, and then we go back to the browser and do like a hard refresh. Hard refresh? It didn't do it. But yeah, Ben makes a good point. Whenever you generate an HTML file in VS Code with the exclamation mark, it will add that by default. Viewport width equals device width, initial scale equals, maybe it needs to be 1.0. Yeah, not if you use Notepad. But yes, that will add it by default. Let's remove that test file. Actually, let's exit here and do a hard refresh. Look at it. Oh, I'm adding it in the index.html. We need to add it on the news page as well. So let's see what the main page. If we go back to the home page, I'm gonna add this as like HTML feedback. We'll say title / header links back to homepage, because that's not happening right now. Because I wanted some way to get back to the homepage, but the only way to do that is to change the URL. Cool. So if we're here and we go to mobile, it breaks. If we go to iPhone X, yeah, something's wrong with this. The title is there, but we can see that it's using the breakpoint. So that meta thing did actually fix it. And oh wait, that's the wrong thing. So if we go to the main, which is the news page, and we add this, let's see what we get. And if we go see latest news, there we go. The breakpoints are happening correctly. Though we can see that there's some weird issues with like padding on the edges. Oh no, that looks better. That looks way better. But it looks like, yeah, there might be some. You probably want this to have 100% width. Okay, I need to get into the actual code review though. This is less about UI, but we fixed that. So by adding that meta viewport tag, oh, am I zoomed in? Well, I was at 100%, so it should be fine. But I think that should be in the code review checklist. Includes meta viewport tag for mobile devices. What? Oh. Wait, I want that to go there. Why am I losing that? There we go. Okay, so that was another point of feedback. All right, let's look at the actual code. Excuse me. What are we doing here? Oh, you know, yeah, if you did a if you did an emote, I don't think it'll work because of the the parsing that I'm doing. Yeah, and as you can see, this review is taking me a while, mainly because I'm doing it live. But I am going to try, I'm going to do as much as I can. I have roughly 30 minutes left on this stream, and I'm going to do a lot offline as well. I can do it a lot faster when I'm not talking about it, but I do want to document a lot of what I'm doing. Thanks for the follow, Eldic. Welcome to the stream. So let's look at the HTML. One thing that I look for is just consistent indentation, and it looks like Cassandra has that. So like all of the elements match up here, and then we're using one set of indentation for each nested child. So that looks great. Let's add that to the checklist. Consistent indentation. So I don't care if you use tabs, I don't care if you use spaces, as long as you're consistent. And it looks like this code is very consistent. So we can see that each nested child is indented by one. Quick, use the prettier extension. Yeah, I don't want to auto-format it because that could change some things. Like my formatting style might be different from hers, but I do like that the indentation is consistent. So that's one thing to look for. Consistent indentation. I like that she's using semantic tags, so let's add that as well. Uses semantic tags where available. So she's using the header tag, which is an HTML5 semantic tag. Like technically, you could just put a div right here, and it would still work. But a header is more semantic because it describes what this thing is actually doing, and screen readers for accessibility can actually look at these and know a bit more about the page. So I like that. Let's see. So we have today's date. Technically, there's a semantic tag for date. So if we search MDN for HTML date, no, that's the header for a page itself. HTML semantic date tag. I know there's like a time tag. Hey, no rickrolls. No rickrolls here. Calm down. Does this work? No. Blink doesn't work, I guess. Semantic markup. Isn't there something for a date? I thought there was. There's definitely one for time. Time. The time element can be used to tell browsers, web crawlers, and other smart devices that a specific bit of content represents time on a 24-hour clock or a specific calendar date. Yeah, so the point of feedback I have there is we should use the time tag instead of a div. Push Rick down. So header, time, main, nav, different things like that. So let's see. So yeah, I would actually change this to a time tag to make it more semantic. And then we've got the main. I like main. Main is a semantic tag. Figure and fig caption, those are also semantic tags. Jim is saying, would the article tag be better for semantic markup? Well, we're on the home page right now. So if we look at main, we'll have to look at the JavaScript to see what it looks like. But yes, article would be a good thing to use. So that's good. And yeah, so the tricky thing about using Bootstrap is that it has all of these extra classes, and so it makes it a little bit harder to be semantic. So I think it is good that we have this button here, but actually with Bootstrap, we can just use the anchor tag and give it a type of button. So another point of feedback for the HTML is, and actually let's also add in here like article, section, etc. And I'm going to link out to this semantic markup page. So a point of HTML feedback is no unnecessary tags. So we can see here we have an anchor tag that's wrapping around a button, but with Bootstrap, we can actually just use an anchor tag. So the point of feedback here is no extra elements, only includes the necessary elements to get things working. Because this results in a lot of extra code. So, and I'll show this really quick. So this is the index.html, and I do have it running right here. Let's go to the index. And we can see right there that this is an anchor tag that's wrapping a button. Yeah. So if we actually just change this button to be an anchor tag, so let's get rid of the anchor tag there. And then we'll give it the href, and we'll change it from a button to an anchor tag, and then save it. It should look exactly the same. But, oh yeah, we can see that we actually get the link, and maybe that's why we had it wrapped, or she had it wrapped before. So let's put that back and see what happens. Does it still... Yeah. And so with a button, you don't get that. There might be a way of doing it with Bootstrap. There might be an extra class that you can add, which will remove the underline. Otherwise, you could target it specifically. So that's something to look at. Okay, now let's... that's good enough there. Let's look at the HTML. Yeah, so you could add a custom style that says text decoration none. Absolutely. I don't think you need type. Class will do it. Yeah, so let's go back to what I had. Oh, there. And get rid of type. And because it has, oh, actually, do we need to add the button class alone like that? And then change this to be an anchor tag instead of a button? Yep, that does it. And so we can see that it's an anchor tag, cool, but it still behaves like a button. And that's, you can see that in the Bootstrap documentation. If we add the btn class, that will remove the text decoration and different things like that, which is cool. So part of the point of feedback is no extra tags, and that was just one that I saw. Okay. Yeah, and you could actually add an extra class probably. Drink some water, thanks. Thanks, Glooscap. Glooscap. I don't have any water though. I have my tea. Okay. Now let's look at the main HTML. So we've got the viewport. One thing that I'm going to add as a point of feedback is that the CSS and fonts are in the head. So let's say CSS links and font links are in the head of the document. And the reason is, when the browser loads this page, this is going to be the first thing that it sees. And you want those CSS styles to be loaded first, so that way you don't have like a split second where the page is unstyled and then the styles kick in. So it's good to have all the styles in the head. So I like that. Yeah. Yeah, and we're mentioning about the button earlier. So yeah, so she did have the button dash dark on there, but we're missing the button base class, which removes like the text decoration and stuff like that. Cool. So I like the learning stuff. Very good. So I do like these to be up at the top. The one thing you can do is you can add a custom attribute that allows it to load in the background instead of waiting for them to load. So one thing we can do is we can see, let's go to the news page. I'm going to clear the network tab. I have the cache disabled, and I'm going to make it so that I have slow 3G connection. So it's like I'm on a cell phone in the middle of nowhere with very little signal. Let's look and see how this page will behave. And actually, let's do this. I'm gonna do it in a blank tab so we can see it load from the beginning. So on network, I'm gonna go slow 3G. We're disabling the cache. Let's see what happens. So we can see the styles haven't loaded yet, and it's using the fallback style. Well, we could see the font wasn't loaded yet, but yeah, welcome to 2002. But you could see for a split second, the buttons actually looked okay, and even though this wasn't the font that we wanted it to be, it was actually I think that it was okay, because you could actually see the cursive fallback style. And then once the font loaded, then it kicked in. And we can see in the network tab that Bootstrap was the first thing to load, and it took 3 seconds to load. And we can see in the waterfall that actually all 5 of those things happened at the same time. So in the background, we were loading Bootstrap, we were loading the fonts, we were loading the custom CSS, we were loading the spinner GIF, and our main JavaScript file. And we can see that a request was made for all of those simultaneously. So this browser is limited to 5 simultaneous requests. So overall, it took roughly 3 seconds to load all of those initial assets, and then the styles kicked in. And that was not bad. So let's watch it again. Yeah. So initially the buttons look okay too, right? And then the font kicks in, and then that gets there. One thing you might do is maybe have a different fallback font instead of like that cursive font, to make it look a little bit more consistent. I think even like Times New Roman, like a bold Times New Roman, would look okay here. Yeah. Try with lazy loading. We could do that too. So there's a way of making the CSS deferred as well. I think it's called defer. Let's see. Fetch, font, image, style, track. Integrity, rel, sizes, type, prefetch. I feel like there is an attribute that will actually let it load in the background. Maybe that's just for JavaScript and not for links. Oh, rel equals preload? Preloading content. Well, no, I think that's for things that you might need in the future. Lets you declare fetch requests in the HTML head. Okay. Regardless. But I think this is totally acceptable, even if we're on a slow 3G connection with no cache. It looked great. And that's, yeah, so that's totally fine. Okay, so we have our header. We're using semantic tags. Let's see. So we have our search box. It's wrapped in a div. It has a label and it has an input. I feel like we should use a form there because it is a search box. So I'm gonna add that in the code review. So in main.html on line 16, search box should be in a form instead of a div. Cool. Again, we need to use semantic tags there. We have our dropdown for sorting. We have our filter container, which I guess we're dynamically adding the buttons to. I would actually probably use a nav class on here, because that's what we're looking at there is this section where all the buttons get added, and this is kind of like navigation. So I might use the nav tag instead of div. Thick HR title. And then we have the section where we are going to be adding the articles, and it has a loading spinner. It's great. All right, now on to the JavaScript code review. We're finally here. It took us like 30 minutes to get here, but let's look at the JavaScript. So if we look at index.js, okay, so this is the file that's loaded for index.html. And the main thing that it's doing is it's setting the current date with JavaScript on the page. timer. Come on, Glooscap. I was a minute behind. I was a minute behind the hydration meter. Underscores, dashes, or camel case for class names. Just be consistent. So I think this is the... we haven't looked at the CSS yet, but the main thing is to be consistent. So these are some things I came up with for HTML. Does anyone have other points of feedback? I want to get to the JavaScript because I'm only going to be streaming for about 15-20 minutes more. Some people might be sensitive to that word, so... But yeah, can anyone think of other points of feedback for HTML? Other things we can look for in terms of like a code review if you're reviewing HTML code. Cool. But we can see that in here, there's a place for the date. Yeah, right here. ID is today's date. And then if we look at index.js, it grabs the element with today's date and then sets it to be the date. Cool. The log is saying, how much do you use ID compared to classes? This is not my code. But ultimately, the reason we're using a lot of IDs here are because of the JavaScript. So the JavaScript is selecting those elements by ID, and I think that's why she's used IDs. In terms of the styles, you can see that she's only using class selectors to actually select elements, which I think is a good practice. If there's only one element on the page with that ID, you might use that in the CSS, but it just makes your CSS very rigid because if you ever change the ID or you want to reuse that CSS, you can't because it's targeted at that specific ID. But the main reason we're using IDs here is not for the CSS, but for the JavaScript. Cool. So the only point of feedback I have in this file is that we're missing a semicolon. So just like with HTML, you want to be consistent with your indentation. In JavaScript, you want to be consistent with your semicolons. So if she had left off semicolons everywhere, that would have been great, totally fine. But because she's using semicolons elsewhere, I would say be consistent with your semicolon usage. So we'll say consistent semicolon usage. Either do or do not. There is no in between. Or, so yeah, and that's the thing. Is she missing a semicolon or does she have 3 extra semicolons? And that's really up to her to decide. She could go in and delete all of the semicolons. And actually, I'm going to disable my linter. Well, I'm going to leave it on for now. No TypeScript. So here's the other point of feedback for index.js is we have this format date function, which is taking in a date, and then it passes that same date into date and then calls to date string. We actually could simplify all of this to just say this, and then you don't really need the function. I could see where you would use that function if you wanted to like pass in a string or something like that, but this should be all you need. If I go back to the browser, it should still work. Like if we go back to the home page, yeah, so we still get the current date right there. So the point of feedback in this index.js file, clean, yeah. Hello, Yusuf, welcome to the stream. So we'll say index.js. Be consistent. Be consistent with semicolons. The format date function is a bit redundant. Can reduce the code to, and then I'll put what I had there. Cool. All right, we'll go back. All right, so that's index.js. Another thing in a code review is really like your variable names. It's going to get more complex in the next JavaScript file, but I think I like this variable name because it's instead of saying like date element, we're saying date p because we know that that is a p tag. So I'm okay with this variable name. So let's add this to our checklist. Variable names are clear or concise, or clear and concise. Naming, we'll say variable naming convention is consistent. So in this case, and that's a good point, Eldick. I might mention that because it is like it actually might be an unnecessary abbreviation, even though it is the p tag is an abbreviation. Variable names are clear and concise. No abbreviations. Variable naming convention is consistent. So camel case. Or well, no, that's not camel case. That's camel case, or Pascal case, or kebab case, or is that snake case? I think that's snake case. Cool. Yeah, date is a name conflict without the p. So yeah, maybe we rename this to like date element or date paragraph. It's not that much, but this may be confusing to someone that's coming along later. All right, let's go into the next JavaScript file. This is where the action is happening. Main.js. There's gonna be a lot of code in here, and unfortunately, this is probably the only review I'm gonna be able to do today. But like I said, offline, I'm gonna do some reviews as well. And for those of you watching in the future, you can kind of use this as an example to see the kind of things that I look for in a review. Okay, so let's start at the top. We have a variable called non-earthling articles, and that's an empty array. I like the variable name. It's descriptive. It's not too long. Some might say it's too long. I think it's not too long. I think it's perfectly fine. That was not a requirement, CX. That was a stretch if you wanted to. So if you wanted to go down the path of not using ES6, then there's that. But you absolutely can use the latest features. Kebab case? Okay, maybe I got that wrong. No, yes. Yeah, kebab cases with dashes, snake cases with underscores. Okay. I like that. So API URLs are reusable, and in this case we see that the the nameless Crag Heroku app is reused twice. And so interesting. What's happening here? It's requesting it twice, but it's the same URL. Huh. Okay, but we're still at the top. So I like that variable name. Search input, I like that. It's descriptive. All approved articles, I like that. So I think one thing that she's doing is actually filtering out articles that may not have like family-friendly content, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I think the next point of feedback is API URLs and other variables are in a reusable variable. So strings used more than once are in a variable. API URL, etc. Yeah, so this really should be put in a variable. I'm very interested, like it might be that this meant to pass in, or she meant to pass in like a query string to say page 2. Yeah, because it's requesting them. Let's look at the network tab and see what's happening here. We're gonna look at XHR requests. Yes. Does that mean you left off the page 2? Yeah, because This gives us back total results 27. Yeah, this is the exact same request. So that's just a point of feedback for you to fix. Oh no. Did I lose my comments? Didn't even notice. Yeah. So heck, what is the query string? Is it just like page 2? Oh no, I lost my comments. Ugh. Where did they go? Yeah. Yeah. Oh wait, is it here? There they are. I still got them. Here we go. Fetch. Well, so no. So this is in main.js. Okay. Put the URL in a variable. Same fetch twice in the get news function. Did you mean to add a query param? That is not a requirement. I don't know where people got that from, but you are absolutely allowed to use the latest and greatest JavaScript. That is not a requirement. Cool. So yeah, I mean, maybe we meant to put like and page equals 2 right here. Let's see what happens. Yeah. Okay, that one has the cut.com as the I don't know if that worked. Yeah, that didn't work. So one thing that Heck did was they actually created their own small little proxy server. Heck, do you have your proxy server on GitHub? Here, Cassandra Goose. Because creating a simple proxy server, no, it's secret. Creating a simple proxy server allowed her to hide her API key. So basically, she made a very simple Express app that is hosted here on Heroku. And when her app makes the request to Heroku, the Heroku app actually goes out to the newsapi.com site that makes the request. But in her proxy, she's not forwarding this page query parameter. So that's good. Thank you, yes, sir. Okay, so that's a point of feedback. We're missing the page parameter there. All articles is both of them. We then have our no banned articles. So I like here that we have a lot of small readable functions. So we have get news, we have no banned articles, we have remove repeating articles, we have add articles to page. Yeah, this is all good stuff. So in terms of feedback, we'll say like function names. Actually, I'll say variable and function names are clear and concise. And variable and function naming is consistent. We'll say functions are as few lines as possible. And the code reads like a sentence. And we can kind of see that here. So the get news function makes a fetch, parses it as JSON, makes a fetch, parses it as JSON. It gets removes all of the banned articles, non-banned articles. So maybe there's a better name for this function. Yeah, so I would say remove banned articles, because it returns an array that does not have banned articles in it. So a better name, and this is just a suggestion. You don't have to rename it, but I think this would be a good name for it. Twitch is buffering, or yeah, it could be filtered articles, renamed to remove banned articles, or filter. So I guess the point of consistent feedback here is function names dictate intent. So like, what is this function going to do? And if we look at our code, this function is going to remove the banned articles, or it's going to filter the articles. So non-banned articles seems like a variable name rather than a function name. So I like the idea of the function name says what it's going to do, whereas this doesn't say what it's going to do. It's just named a thing. So maybe that's a good point of where if others are trying to figure out how to name their function names, that's what you can keep in mind. Because this next one, remove repeating articles, it's intent. Yeah, and this is the intent. The intent of this function is to remove the repeating articles. Yeah. Cool. So it's interesting that you're using semicolons, heck, because I've known you as someone that doesn't use semicolons. Have you switched? Are you a semicolon user? And the thing is, you have some inconsistent semicolon usage, and we've got a new patron. Yerm Sekis has pledged $1 on Patreon. Thank you so much, Yerm Sekis. Amek says, I hate semicolons. Well, you have them everywhere. So either remove all of them, or there's a few places where you're missing them. So there's a missing semicolon there. Technically, because you're using these arrow functions, you should actually put a semicolon after the curly brace. Because this is a function expression. So in JavaScript, every expression should end with a semicolon if you're using semicolons. So you have a few places where you're missing semicolons. I use them because I have to at work, but I can't function without a linter. So maybe a point of feedback is to install. Do you have a linter file in here? No, maybe you can add a linter, and that would help you be more consistent. A few missing semicolons. Be consistent. All right. So that looks fine to me. There's a little work we need to do there. Okay, remove repeating articles. So this takes in an array of articles. Oh, cool. So we're using, this is like a classic code challenge. You have an array, and it potentially has repeating things in it. And the reason they're repeated actually is because you've made the same request twice. So maybe if you update this to be page 2, then you won't actually have to remove repeated articles. But let's look at your function. So we do articles.filter. We're keeping track of all of the articles we've seen by their title. And if we haven't seen it, we return true. But if we have seen it, we return false. So this is great. This is like a very easy way to remove duplicates. One thing that we could do instead is to create potentially a set, though they're going to be different objects, so that'd be a little bit harder. I like this. This line of code here is actually not necessarily redundant, but we can remove it because a function that doesn't return anything will return undefined, and that's falsy, and the filter function will detect that as falsy. So technically, we could remove this line of code, and it should still work. Yeah. All right. No banned articles. So we're filtering the articles. Yeah, use a set and convert it to an array. So you could use a set, but these objects are coming from 2 totally different requests. So even though they're duplicated, they're 2 different object references. So it would be a little bit tricky to do with a set, because with the set, if we spread if we spread this into a set, it's not going to detect that 2 things are different, or two things are the same because they're objects and they have different references. I use the Airbnb style guide. That's my favorite. So the set wouldn't exactly work because it goes by reference, and these are different references because they're coming from two different arrays, even though they're the object has the same properties. Okay, so no banned articles. Articles.filter. We grab the lowercase title, and if any of the banned words is in the title, so we want to return true if none of the banned words are in the title. So my one point of feedback here, and actually, should I look at the banned words? Okay. If you're under the age of 13, please hide your eyes. We're about to see some banned words. These aren't that bad. So what I might do instead of an array is to create a regular expression. And actually, let's see what happens if we don't remove the banned articles. So hide your eyes. All right, let's go back to the browser. Let's see what happens. There may not be any banned things in here. Okay, there was a really bad one. Okay. But here's what I'm thinking. Instead of using an array and filtering over it, is we could use a regular expression instead. So we could turn the banned words into a regular expression. So let's say banned regex is going to be a new regex where we take all of the banned words and we join them together on a pipe. So the pipe is the OR operator in a regular expression, and we make this global. And so what that does is it creates a regular expression where all of these banned words are separated by a pipe, which means OR. Yeah, the main benefit is we're not doing as much looping, because basically what's happening is we have to iterate over this banned words list for every single article to check to see if any of them are in there. The code looks dirty, and that's why we're given feedback. So if we do this, that'll create a regular expression, and then we can just say right here we could return article.title.to_lowercase.match banned regex. And so what this will do is this will only show banned articles. Let's see if it worked. I don't think it worked. Hey, no worries, Conrad. We'll do a game night pretty soon, maybe in a week or so. Movies, album, episodes. Oh, you don't want anything about movies or TV shows. Okay, so technically we're doing the reverse, which is good. So this is the regular expression that we created. And actually, we can also do a case-insensitive search. And that way we don't have to go to lowercase. So if we do this, we only get banned articles. And then if we flip it, now we're getting anything that's not banned. So that's one point of feedback here, is to create a regular expression, and that way we're not doing as much looping. So I'm going to add that over here. And I actually have to go, so I have to go to a stand-up. I think what I'll do is I'll take a break, and then I'll come back, because I do want to finish this code review. But like I said, it's taking me way longer because I'm talking about everything out loud. But it's good that we're coming up with these checklists. And so those of you that are watching in the future, or that are creating projects in the future, you can use these as a guideline for code review. Try using a regex instead of looping over the banned words. Look, Sean says, I thought I was a JavaScript expert. Honestly, no one's an expert. Like, maybe people that have been doing it for 30 years, but JavaScript is a very big and complex language, and that there's a lot in it. Okay, so that was one point of feedback. I'll put it back to the way it was, but that was a point of feedback. Okay. And it changes so rapidly. Absolutely. Like, you get new now we're getting new features every single year. Cool. We have our reset articles function, which non-earthling articles is all approved articles, and then we add articles to the page. Yeah. So one point of feedback is we have these global variables, and it looks like these global variables are what all of the functions are operating on. There's probably a way to code this so that way we don't have global variables, or at least maybe we put all of this code inside of a function called app or something, and so that way they're not global, they're just local to that function. Yeah. Just Web is asking, what Electron apps have I written recently? Pretty much this one. This is like the most recent one that I've written. If you search on my GitHub, or on the Coding Garden GitHub for live chat window, that's this thing. It's not that complicated, but it was cool to get the transparency working. Hex says, I originally didn't have the global variables. Yeah, it gets tricky though, because you have these functions which are doing your filtering, and you have functions which are, yeah, so filtering by user filtering or filtering by banned words, and you need to be operating on the same array, so you kind of do need that global variable, but there's probably a way to do it without the direct global variable. Okay, so we're setting up the select, we get the sort element, we're adding classes. Cool. One thing to note about class list is you actually don't need to pass in an array. You can just pass in multiple, and that will work. Josh taught me that one. So that's one point of feedback. We're adding an event listener, and so anytime the sort changes, so that's the drop down, we say get news with the sorted value. And so basically that's how that piece is working. We're on this page, and when we change this to popular, and we can watch the network tab, when we change this to popular, that makes a new network request to sort by popularity. Cool. Or when we change to relevant, it makes a new network request that sorts by relevancy. Cool. All right. We are here. All right, I have to go to stand up, but I will be back in 10 or 15 minutes to finish this code review and try to respond to some of the comments. But I will be back. In the meantime, you can play the drop game. Let's watch all these wonderful drops. Oh, and watch. There is now collisions with individual drops. Let's watch it. When they hit each other, they're going to bounce off of each other. Yeah. It's so cool. Terrazoid added that. Yeah, there he is, Terrazoid. Or she, sorry. But yeah, they can hit each other. Cool. All right, I'll be back in 10 to 15 minutes. Be nice to each other. See you soon. Hello, friends. I'm back. Yes, I actually missed stand-up. It happened at 9, so I had to send my updates in Slack. That's unfortunate. But let's see. Did I catch up on anything? There might have been some chats that happened earlier that did not get to. Here's what I'll do. I'll acknowledge all of the Twitch follows because I appreciate each and every one of you, and then we'll get back into it. Thanks for the follow, Gord, an hour ago. Hopefully you're still around. Thanks for the follow, Gregory Wolf. Thanks for the follow, Eldic. Thanks for the follow, Visherd. Thanks for the follow, Maid. Thanks for the follow, Septical. Hello and welcome, everyone. Hello, Katoli. Hello, Sukjit. Hello, Andreas. And Andreas says, heck, your app looks awesome. Hello, Jayshree. We're not building anything. I am doing a code review for a submission to the O1 front-end project. Yeah, and hello, Lynn. Hello, Resmed. Hello, Maroof. Hello, Programming with Peter. Welcome to the show. Okay, so where we were, we were doing a code review of this. One thing that I thought of was, one of the things that I just gave feedback about is this thing here to use a regular expression instead of this. And the point of feedback that other people can take from this is try to avoid nested loops. I'm still only on the first submission infy. It's taking me a while, but basically I'm coming up with this this checklist that we can use, which should make things go faster in the future. And also, I talk a lot. I don't know. But the point of feedback here is try to avoid nested loops where possible. Because a filter is a loop, so we're looping over the array. And then for each item in that array, we are looping over the banned words multiple times. Hey, no need to be sorry, heck. It's just something to take into account in the future. And every is actually a loop. You may not think of it like that because you just see this function call, but every will look at every item in the banned words array. Yeah, I'm going to keep doing reviews for at least the next 2 weeks. I'll say that. So if you submit anywhere in the next 2 weeks, you'll definitely get some comments and feedback from me. And then in maybe a week or so, anyone that's finished, and if they're open to it, I might actually have them do like a video chat and do a presentation of their project, which would be cool. But the point of repeatable feedback is nested loops avoided where possible. And even though this isn't like a for loop inside of a for loop, it's still a nested loop. Mahidra's review is next? It might be. I probably won't be able to get to it on stream, but I'm going to give you just as much feedback as I'm giving heck in the GitHub issue itself. So you can see this was my UI feedback for her. We're working on the code feedback. Everyone's going to get a similar amount of feedback. Okay. So we set up the select box. That's the thing on the right where you can change by popularity. That's cool. Again, there's a missing semicolon, so set up a linter or something like that. Set up search. Okay, so we grab the search input. We add a class to it. Interesting. So my point of feedback here is because we're already accessing that element. So if we look in main and we get the element with the ID search, where is it? Here. And then we're adding this search input class to it. Well, my point of feedback, Infi, is to be consistent with your semicolon. So because Cassandra has semicolons everywhere else, I'm saying you're missing a semicolon. If you write code that doesn't have semicolons and you add a semicolon somewhere, my feedback for you is get rid of that semicolon. So it's dependent on the code. You just need to be consistent. Yeah, so my point of feedback right here is we could probably just put this this class already in the HTML instead of having to do it with JavaScript. Yeah. Yeah, I'll take a look at it live. I'll try to do that before I go, Mahidra. Yeah, and Mahidra and I have had a lot of back and forth too. You can look at that that GitHub issue to see suggestions and questions that he's had and stuff like that. So what you're saying is use TypeScript. No. Yeah, so my point of feedback right here is you could have just added that class in the HTML instead of with JavaScript. Okay, so now we're listening for any time there's a key up. And if the length of the search input is 0, we reset the article. So basically that's how this piece here is working. So if I start searching for Tom DeLong, I guess he's included in that. What are some other things I can search for? Yeah, what if I search for tentacle? So each letter filters the array, and then when it gets back down to 0, it resets it to the original array. So that's how that's working. And then we have this search function, which takes in the value. We reset the articles. What does reset articles do? It says the articles are all of the approved articles, and then it adds all of them to the page. And then we have this. So another point of feedback is consistent quote usage. So everywhere else in her code, she's using single quotes, but right here, she's got some double quotes. So I would fix that. Either or. Don't mix. Cool. Now, I see some potentially extra things that are happening here. So whenever we do the search, we call reset articles. Reset articles adds all of the articles to the page. And so add articles to page is the thing that will actually go through and create the article elements and all that good stuff. But there's potentially some rework that's happening here, right? Because every time we enter a letter, it's putting all of them on the page, and then we do the filter, and then we reset and only add the filtered ones to the page. So what I might do is I would move this like as a third else. So if search length equals 0, no articles found. So, well, I'll leave that there for a second, but we haven't seen this. Like, what happens if yeah, it says that. That's good. But what I probably want to do is, if there is no search, actually, I don't think we need that. Yeah, if I just get rid of that altogether, because you already have it handled here. If the search is empty, we reset the articles. But if it's not, we say no articles found if there are none, or we add those given articles to the page. So I think if we remove that, it should still work. Yeah, it still works. I can get rid of that, and it still works. Cool. So that piece of code was redundant, and basically we were doing extra work. We were adding everything to the page and then filtering it, so you can just remove that line, and your logic still works. Cool. All right, the setup filters function is, I'm guessing, what creates these buttons up at the top. So let's look at it. So current available filters, and we've hard-coded those, which is totally fine. Time to hydrate. So that looks good. We're grabbing the filter container, and then for each filter, interesting. I guess with daily star, you have to lowercase it because that's how the articles come back. That's interesting. You could potentially make these objects where you have like the label of the button and then the filter property, where this could actually be an object where label is daily star and filter is lowercase daily star. The only thing about this is this line of code has to run every single time, and it only really cares about this one, whereas it's ignored on the others. This array isn't that long, so you don't really have to worry about performance, but it is something to think about. Okay. Cool, you have like this helper function called create any element with content. You put in the type of element you want to create, the parent, I'm guessing, and then, whoa, there's a lot of extra stuff. So let's see. This line is 158 characters long. I would probably try to format this. So because we're like passing in some nested objects and stuff, maybe we do this. Like we go to the next line here. Wait, where was I? Something like that. So that way, it's a little bit easier. It's all on the same page. I do have my font like really, really big. But even technically, if you're looking at the font or the text like that, yeah. So, a point of feedback here is, oh, and then also I didn't mention it because she's done a really good job of it, is consistent indentation. We can see that we have our function, it's indented when we're inside of it, we have nested functions, and we have the indentations there, so those look great. But the other point of feedback is line length. So we'll say a reasonable max line length wrap/reformat code when it gets too long. And so this is a point where I would have wrapped it. Okay, and then whenever we click one of those buttons, we clear the search value, and then we do a search with the button that we clicked on. And thanks for the YouTube sub, Android. What does the search function do? Ah, okay, it just does the filtering. I see. And I guess basically we're checking to see, yeah, and this might be one area where we can improve this. Because we have multiple two lowercases and matches. But so one thing we could do is whenever we get the articles, create like a single search property on it that we can then use later on. Let's actually do that right now. So after we've gotten the news, we have these articles, and then we add the articles to the page. Yeah, that does all that business. So before we add the articles to the page, I would want to set their search contents. So we could do something like for each one, we'll say article dot search text, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a single property that has all of these properties that we're searching against. So these here, JS TLDR. I'll take a look at that in a second. Is that like JavaScript news? So the title, the content, the source.name, and the description, these are all the things that we're searching against. So what I can do is create a single property that has all of these things in it. So we'll have like article.title space article.content space article.source.name space and then we have article.description. Cool. And that's getting pretty long. We can probably wrap it. Well, thank you, Heck. Yeah, so basically now that we have this search text, we can just use it later on when we're doing the search. And then that whole thing we want to do two lowercase on. Cool. So now when I've gotten those articles back from the API, they have this search text property. And then down below, when I'm doing the filtering, or when you're doing the filtering, we can just do one. We can just say article.searchText.match that regex term. Cool. And that should still work. Tentacled. Tom DeLong. Yeah, so it still works. And what's cool is now I don't have to, in the code, you don't have to access each property and call two lowercase on it. Now we can just say article.searchText matches that thing. And basically we've pre two lowercased it and pre-computed that search text. So that's cool. Well, we were looking at this. Oh yeah, let's look at this helper function, create any element with content. So we have the element type, the parent, the content, the attributes, and the classes. This is almost like the virtual DOM. You have a way of creating elements dynamically, and you're passing in all the stuff. I mean, this isn't the virtual DOM because we're still just doing DOM manipulation. Okay, but we do document.createElement and pass in the type. So in this example, we were creating a button. Cool. We have the parent. So later on, I guess we say parent append child, that element we created. Cool. The third parameter is content. And so in this case, the content is going to be the filter itself, like Vice News or Gizmodo. Okay. The attributes are, we have each item and then the attribute that it should be. Okay, so like that's the ID attribute and that's the value attribute. Okay, I might have actually flipped this on its head. That's a good point, Josh. Yeah. So what I was just doing before is we're creating the search text. And really, we could actually just make this a regular expression. So let's do this. So we say a new regex that has that, and it's global and case insensitive. And then later on, when we use the search text, the match function accepts a regular expression, so that should be case insensitive. Oh, no. No, I can't do that because we're passing the regular expression here. So we'll go back to what it was. But if we remove two lowercase there, and then we make it a case insensitive regular expression here. So if we do G and I, now it will search for that term with case insensitive, and that should work. So if we save that, if we now search for tentacled, it still works. Cool. Good suggestion, Josh. Okay, so what we're looking at is we're passing in this object. It has some properties, which, so if you haven't seen this before, this is actually an ES 2015 computed property. So we're going to end up with an object where it says like Vice News ID, and then that value, the value. What I'm thinking they're going to do, I haven't seen the code yet, but they're probably going to say like object.keys and iterate over it, or object.entries. But I think there's a better way, because if we actually flip this, then we wouldn't have to use the computed. We could actually say like ID is the filter and value is the filter value. So I'm going to flip this because to me it's a little bit easier to read. You don't have the weird computed. And I believe these are the attributes, right? Yeah, so these are attributes, and let's see what we're doing with the attributes. So if attributes are defined, we get the keys, and then we set them. And so actually this would just flip it on its head. So now, well, not on its head, it just flips it. So we're setting the attribute, which is the key. So the attribute would be like ID, and then the value we want is attributes at that key. Cool. And one thing we could do, we get tricky with it, is we could do object.entries, and we'll call this like key pair, because that's going to give us, or key pairs, that's going to give us arrays that have the key and the value. So technically what we could do is we could destructure it. We could destructure it to get the attribute and the value. And then we can just do this, attribute and value. And that should work. So basically what we're doing, oh, I might have broke it. Let's look at the dev tools. Failed to execute set attribute on element. That is not a valid attribute name. Oh, okay. It's being called in multiple places. So I can't change it because I'd have to change it in multiple places. But basically everywhere you call this create any element with content, you would need to update the object where the properties are the attributes you want to set, and then the values are the values you want to set. So that's what I would do there. I'm going to go back because I'd have to update all of your code. So we're going to go back to what you had. But that's a point of feedback is instead of using like the computed properties, you can use the actual, use the property names to be the attributes you want to set. Cool. And then what's the last thing? Any classes. So any classes that are in the array, you add it. This is really cool. This is a nice little helper function that will pretty much let you create any HTML element. One point of feedback I have is this is a lot of parameters to the function, right? So if you're calling this function later, you might forget the order of these parameters. So the code review feedback is functions take in a reasonable number of parameters. And I'm saying reasonable because it's really up to you, but let's say like ideally 3 or less params. Because once you get past 3 parameters, it's really hard to remember which order you need to pass them in. Otherwise, use an options object. And so what wouldn't need to remember the order with TypeScript. Technically, the editor should help me, right? So if I do this, if I try to invoke the function, create any element, it does tell me the order of the parameters, right? It does help. Oh, and that's a good point, Josh. Yeah, you should be able to pass in the array, and then you don't need to iterate. Cool. But yeah, technically it does tell me the parameters, but that's I don't like it. It's too many. So what I would prefer to do is to pass in an object that has a bunch of options on it, like this. So we can say let's pass in type. Parent, content, attributes, and classes, like that. And we'll use the type right here. So now that we've, yeah, that's enough TypeScript jokes for today, Mattia. But now that we have this object with all of these options, whenever we call the function, it'll be a little bit clearer to what we're actually passing in. So we're going to pass in one big nested object, but now we need to name all of the things. So type is button. And parent is the filter container. And the content is that. And the attributes are those. Oh. And the classes are those things. Like that. So now when we call this function, from where I'm calling it, it's very clear what those parameters I'm passing in are, because I basically named them with an options object. So we have type, we have parent, we have content, and that just makes the code a little bit easier to read rather than seeing like 7 different parameters to the function. All right, I'm gonna go back to the way it was because I would have to update my code everywhere, but that's one point of feedback, Cassandra, is to essentially use something like that. And then the suggestion from Josh is really good. So whenever, well, I need to keep going back because we need to go back here. Like that. But the class list actually just accepts an array. So if we just did this, so if classes are defined, we can do class list.add classes. Easy enough. Cool. It should still work. Oh no, it didn't work. Oh yeah, so class list does not accept an array. We need to spread it. It accepts multiple arguments though. But technically we could do this. If we spread the array as arguments, then it will, it should add, yeah, so that adds all of the classes. Because otherwise it just does a toString on the array, which just joins it by commas. So if we spread it, then we can just pass it into class list.add. Cool. All right. We're getting close to the end. Let's see. So setup article creates an article, creates the title, the date and the author, the picture and content, the title and details, and then returns an object with all of those things. So basically, this function is going to get called when we're iterating over the articles to add them to the page. So first thing we do is remove all the existing articles because we're either showing new ones or filtering or something like that. Articles div, remove align text center. Oh, I see. So if it was loading, we actually want to remove the center because the center, whenever it's loading, that's what puts the loading spinner in the center. Yeah, that. And then we remove the center so that way it still works. I see what you're doing there. Non-earthling articles for each one. We set up the article. If the index is even, what are we doing different? Oh, we're putting image first and paragraph second. There's probably a way you can do this with CSS. So like you could potentially make this a flex box and then do every even child has justify content or like flex direction reverse. And so every even one would reverse the column or reverse the picture and the text. I don't know if you want to do that or not, but that's one way you could solve this same problem, but with CSS rather than JavaScript. We create a bunch of elements, and we append it to the page. Okay, here's another point of feedback. So we can see, well, I was thinking like, is it better to solve a problem with CSS rather than JS? It depends. Like if it doesn't take that much code to do this with CSS instead, you've basically reduced the amount of JavaScript you've had to write by like 4 lines, right? You can remove those lines and then just handle it with CSS. So it's really up to you. Yeah, and the other thing about changing that function to take in an object, what's cool is now if you're not specifying classes or attributes, you don't have to have all these nulls all over the place. You can just leave them off and it'll make the code look a little bit nicer. But what I was thinking is inside of a for each, you really don't want to reselect the same thing over and over again, but I think I see what you're doing here. You're dynamically selecting the article that just got added to the page and then putting a read more element on it. What I think you can do is just append it. Yeah, so where are you creating the content element? Yeah, where are you giving a thing an ID content? I see, right here. So what I would probably do is you could actually store this in a variable. So we could say like let content element equal null, and then store it in a variable. Like that, because that is the element with that ID. And then we should just be able to do this and then get rid of the query selector. I think. Let's see if it works. The main thing that was doing was adding the more link. Yep, so that works. That works. Cool. Yeah. So basically what I did there is you were adding it to the page and then selecting it by the ID that you gave it. But because your function already returns the element that it creates, we can just get that element back and immediately add the more anchor tag to it without having to reselect it. So that's cool. All right. Yeah, we're going to go back to the way it was, though. Mahidra says, finally, I'm understanding how to read code. That's good. So yeah, I'll add to the feedback here. You can use the element you created instead of selecting it at the bottom of the function. Yep, this is vanilla.js. It's a bunch of like selecting elements and different things like that. Cool. All right, there's a few more functions we got to look at. Format content snippet. Snippet.split. Where is this used? Oh, article.content. So article.content for some reason has a square bracket at the beginning. We could look at the stuff that we get back from the API. Article dot content. Maybe only certain ones have like a bracket there? That's really weird. Yeah, I'm not sure why you're doing that, Heck. Maybe there were some results you got back from the API that were doing that. All right, let's see where format date is used. Yep, I think, again, it's kind of like redundant usage, very similar to your index.js, where you're passing in a date and then using the date. Though, this is a good usage of it, and I would see why you do that, because article.published@, is an actual string that you need to convert to a date. Oh, it's the snippet. It says number of words that didn't come back. Okay, so if we look at the full content, let's look at the response. Oh, okay, if I hover over it, I see. Plus 350 characters, so it tells you how much is missing. So you're basically chopping off the end there. Okay, that's totally fine. But I think in this case, your format date function works because maybe you could do this. You could say if type of date is a string, else take the date itself. So that way, if it's a string, you know you need to parse it. But if it's anything else, which is most likely an actual date object, you don't need to turn it into a date. And then you just do that, and that should work. So the main thing is this date here is a date object. It's not a string. But then these dates are strings that need to be converted into dates. So yeah. All right. Alt text. Please see URL to get detailed information on this image. The API use does not provide alternate text. So let's see all the places that you're using this. I'm guessing it's when you want to add alt text to the image. Yeah. So make the default param date.now. We're always passing in a date. It's not. Oh, I guess you're right, Katoli. Because if we ever call this for the top, it is like date.now. There are multiple things you could do there, but basically it seems like passing into date is a little redundant because it's already a date. For alt text, I'm actually just use the title. So we can see if we hover over it, or if we at least look at it in the DOM, it's going to have that really long alt text. Please see this URL to get detailed information on this image. The API use does not provide alternate text. Instead of that, I would just use the title. Use the title of the article. Let's see. Yeah, so when we create this image, Umhex says, I decided against the title because it won't actually be useful to someone who can't see the image. That makes sense. I would maybe try to think how to make this less words, because if somebody is blind and they're looking at your page, that's going to be a lot of text that it needs to read. Oh, and I broke something. What did I break? Oh, I need to do that. There we go. Cool. Awesome. Articles equals get news. Let's see. Oh. Are you actually, you're not actually using articles anywhere. So down here at the bottom, you can just call get news, because that's kind of what kicks off the AJAX request in the background. So you don't need to put that in a variable. And then what does setup page do? Okay. And I would actually flip these around, because your get news function, later on your functions need to use the articles div. So I would do this first to make sure that the articles div actually exists, and then your other functions which are appending to it will work. And then we call get news. Cool. So the point of feedback there is no extra variables. Cool. And there's still CSS that we have to look at. I'm going to do some quick CSS feedback. let's see. We'll say consistent indentation. The CSS is going to be so bad. Let's see. Consistent indentation, consistent naming convention. Yeah, you're very welcome, Heck. And hopefully other people can use this feedback that I'm giving in their own projects. So Katoli is mentioning window.onload. We don't actually need that here because Heck has put their JavaScript at the bottom of the file. So by the time the JavaScript starts loading, all of the other elements have already been added to the page, so we don't need to wait for window onload. So this is actually okay. If we put this JavaScript above all of these elements, then we would need to wait for onload because that JavaScript shouldn't run until those elements are on the page. So that's potentially another point of feedback here. Actually, that's HTML feedback. JavaScript files are linked at the bottom of the page. Yeah, or Trix is mentioning we can use defer. So linked at the bottom of the page or at the top with an onload function or at the top with a defer attribute. So there are a lot of different ways to get around that where your JavaScript is running before the elements are on the page, and those are a few of them. And in this case, Heck has their code at the bottom, and that makes the page still work. Cool. All right, well, look at the CSS, and then I have to go. Unfortunately, I did want to look at other issues, but this was good. We created a checklist. I'll be able to check it in. So let's see. I think this is good consistent naming. So like custom main, custom heading, custom accent, custom subheading. What is custom used for though? Custom select, custom container padding. See you later, Dirkerall. Thanks for tuning in. Maybe there's a better name than custom. Maybe use like app heading or app accent. Because custom seems very generic to me. So let's add that in the checklist. Consistent naming convention. Uses... Heck says, I didn't want to conflict with Bootstrap. That makes a good point. The way to make sure it doesn't happen is to use... some sort of prefix. So your app is called non-earthling news. So non-earthling news if you did like nen heading or something like that. So if you should prefix things with something that you know is not going to conflict with the underlying CSS. So something like nen, or call it like non-earthling. And if you put that in front of all of your custom classes, you can be sure that you're not going to conflict with Bootstrap. Okay. So font sizes, we're using rims. That's great. Yeah, so for these two, there's a lot of shared CSS. So I would actually try to combine these. It looks like the only difference is margin top 5%. So really what we could do, let's put that there. No, let's do this. So the thick HR has margin top 5%, and then they both share the rest of these styles. So we could do that, comma that, and now they both share the base styles, but the thick HR has a margin top of 5%. I think that everything else was shared. Maybe I broke some things. Let's put it back. Did I get something wrong? I think that was right. But the point of feedback for CSS is, well, let me finish this thought. Uses prefix reused styles are, we'll say like no duplicate styles. Reuse where applicable. So feedback here is because these classes are almost exactly the same, the only difference is that, we'll keep going, is this one has margin top 5%. We can actually combine those with the comma operator. So I would do that. This looks fine. Yeah, I think everything else is totally fine. I could probably get more nitpicky with it, but I do gotta go. So that's my main feedback for CSS. And we did have the feedback that, let's see, that the article should actually break sooner. So if we look in your main.js, when we add those bootstrap responsive classes, let's see. Create setup article. Where are we adding those classes? Here. So we're adding it's just the class column. Oh no, here we're adding the image and the p tag, and we're adding column sm. What we could do, and the feedback that I'm talking about is basically we go from here, and then when we get to about right here, it does this weird thing where like the images are stretching and the text hasn't wrapped yet. Basically, I would make it so that when we get here, it immediately breaks to a single column so that it looks like that. Because this looks great. But the in-between is what looks a little weird. So the feedback is you can change those classes so that it breaks a little bit sooner. Okay, that's it. I'm going to submit this. I'm also going to say, if you have the time, and I don't know if you do, heck, watch the video to see more feedback not listed here. Also, take a look at the checklist I created. Checklists I created in this repo, because I'm about to push those checklists up. Yes, and great submission, heck. Like, I just tore apart her project for like 2 hours, but let it be known that was a great submission. The code is not that bad. There's just like a few points of improvement, but it's really good. So I'll add that comment there. So heck, you can check out my code review comment. You can check out my UI feedback comment, and I'm going to push up these checklists so that anyone else, if you want to do just like some self-assessment, you can go ahead and fix some things before I look at your code. But I have some UI points, some code review checklist points. Put that on your resume. My code is not that bad. Yeah. And I'm going to add a link to those checklists here in the README. I'm going to add it right here. See the and UI review checklist to know what I'll be looking for. And I'll link to those code review checklist.md and UI review.md, like that. Did I spell it right? World's okayest developer. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. I'm gonna add these checklists so other people can take a look at them as well. Ooh, extra letter at the end. That's okay. So those of you that are watching at home, if you go to this GitHub repo and you can take a look at the UI review checklist to see things that I'm going to be looking for, so you can kind of like self-assess, and then also take a look at the code review checklist to see things that I'm going to be looking for as well. Hello, Alka. Welcome to the stream. I got to go, but welcome. All right, let me see if there's any work emergencies. Let's see. Okay. There are no work emergencies. You're very welcome, Heck. Hopefully the things I mentioned help. Hopefully they're actionable. I did not mean to tear apart your code. It's really just things to help you become a better coder. Like I mentioned at the beginning, you are not your code. You're always going to get better at coding. So yeah, no emergencies. I'm gonna try to review some comments. So I'm not gonna be able to do any in-depth reviews like that, but I know people do have questions, and there is a submission that I can review really quick. Actually, let's do that first. So Jorge submitted this project submission, which I haven't gotten to take a look at yet. So I will look at it, add a comment that says, well, and look, Jorge has already gotten started, but yeah, let's just look at their submission. So Jorge is creating a project called Popular on Letterboxd, a website where you can find the most reviewed and liked films or film lists from the movie enthusiast community of Letterboxd. Very cool. And so there's a Letterboxd API. This is what they've decided to use. It provides access to the Letterboxd service. So I've never heard of Letterboxd, but this is really cool because you can get comments, films, members, news. You can search. It's pretty awesome. And then let's take a look at their project description. So Popular on Letterboxd is a website where you can find the most viewed and liked films and film lists from the movie enthusiast community of Letterboxd in a clean-looking display. So what is your motivation for creating this project? I am a film enthusiast and a regular Letterboxd user, and also a starting web developer. I want to combine my two passions and practice my skills. Wonderful, wonderful. So how will the users interact with your website? They will be able to enter the films and lists by weekly and all-time popularity, and can also filter films by genre. Additionally, they can type in some keywords to look for specific types of lists, genres, authors, and actors. That's perfectly fine. So this is a great description of how the app will work. Basically, it's going to be similar to non-Earthling news, but it's about films instead of UFOs, which is totally fine. And this is a good description of how users will interact with the site. So I think this is great. For the stack, they're going to use Materialize, and they're going to attempt to use Webpack to bundle their app. They'll use Trello to manage it. They're going to commit their code after every major change. They're going to test their site in different browsers and devices, and they're going to use Adobe XD to design it. So I think this is great. As you can see, they've already started working on the designs, but I'm going to go ahead and add the label project started. So it should show up like that. Yeah, great work. I'm sorry, like it's been a few days since I've been able to review these issues, so bear with me. But they got some time to work on their project, and they created these mock-ups or wireframes using Adobe XD. So this is the landing page. Popular on Letterboxd, also known as Poll, P-O-L, where you can find the most reviewed films. And so what we're looking at here is just mock-ups. They're not the actual implementation, but they used Adobe XD to create the layout, and then they're going to try to implement themselves. Very cool. And then they finished. Once again, it took long to do it, but it's here. And so you have the films page, which is going to be scrollable, and I guess it'll have pagination. That's really cool. It'll look good on mobile. And look at this. So they added... no, sorry. This is someone else who was commenting. So Jake commented, I like it other than the colors. And that's okay. Not everyone might like the colors, but this green on black might be hard for some people to read. I mean, you can still use green, orange, and blue, but you might just find three colors that are more complementary to each other, though you're probably just using the colors from Letterboxd, aren't you? That might be it. And I don't know if those colors look that great together. This green is like a very lime green. So you could use a tool like Coolers, which will help you find complementary colors. You can actually put in a color and then find colors that are complementary to it. So we can just do this really quick. Let's grab the orange here, and let's find like a complementary green. So if we put in that instead, and then we lock it, we can generate complementary colors to that. So if we keep generating, eventually we'll find a green. Like this is a much softer green. It's not as bright. And I think that green might actually look better than this brighter green that you have. That said, if you're just using the default colors of Letterboxd, which I think that's what that is, then go for it. Like, you don't have to change the color, but it is a little harsh. We'll say that. Cool. Yeah, and they provided some links. So thanks for your comment, Jake. It definitely provided some resources for others in the future as well. So, looks great. Can't wait to see the finished product. So there you go, Jorge. Thanks for submitting. There's some feedback. And let me know when you're ready for a review or a code review. Let's do this. We'll look at two. We'll look at two issues. So we looked at that one, and actually let's update the labels, because I already so we're not waiting for a code review or feedback. I'll say update / changes requested, because based on that feedback that I gave, I would like Cassandra Goose, if she has the time, to update her code and let me know. So I updated the labels there. Let's look at two issues, and then I will go. So we're going to look at IP Map Visualizer by Tom. Okay. So they had an issue. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to help them, but this is the other thing. If you submit a project here, you can basically use your project submission thread to ask for help, to ask for lessons, different things like that. Am I missing the Twitch chat? Hi. No, it's still there. Okay, just making sure. Just making sure you're all still there. So they added a comment, says, I was having some CORS issues, but it seemed to be due to the Vigilante API. What's up, Valka? Blastoise. Is there any reason the following code wouldn't work? Logging element is giving a null error, and the event listener can't be applied to null. It's possible that your JavaScript is running before the page has that element, and that's why getElementById would return null. Yeah, and so the result, or the way they fixed it, was to do window.onload to wait for it. But the other fix is to put their script at the bottom of the page. Let's see if the latest code is on GitHub. Yeah, submitted 8 hours ago. If we look at main, they're getting some IP info, and if we look at their index.html, yeah, we can see that source main is loaded in the head. So because they have it in the head, they actually need to wrap their code in window onload. If you take the script tag and put it at the bottom, you wouldn't need to do that, because all of the elements would have already loaded on the page. Cool. Yeah, but I guess they're keeping on. And let's look at this one from Prox, who's making a Fortnite tracker submission. Almost done. I'm working on rendering user stats. Here's my app. Still needs some fixes. Cool. And Jake is giving some feedback too, so that's great. Statistic page looks amazing. You should increase the heading font size. Yeah, and the thing about style feedback is it's all opinion based. You don't have to implement any of this, but I very much appreciate Jake for giving some feedback. But let's take a look at it. Fortstats.netlify. First off, I love it. So I love like the transparency of like, and the purple color looks really nice. There's like that really cool background image, which seems to resize. Yeah, this looks really cool. So I know of Ninja. Let's find the Ninja stats. So hitting enter, I think, should submit the form, but I think I have to click search. Oh, there we go. It just takes a second to load. So some feedback is to potentially add some loading spinners, so we can see when stuff is happening in the background. But this looks awesome. Did they write the CSS from scratch? This is so cool. Overview card, overview rank. Yeah, this looks great. This is top notch. Yeah, and look at that, and they've got breakpoints too. So when we go down to mobile, they automatically resize. Yeah, this looks great. And so I'm guessing they're hitting some sort of Fortnite API, FortniteTracker.com. Way cool. Way cool. And let's also try using their Fortnite username, gzproxin. It's even webpacked, yeah. So when we were looking at the source here, you could see, or looking at the elements, you could see that it's like main.some hash. So that lets you know that they've actually bundled their CSS. All right, let's go home and let's search for GZ Proxen. Yeah, so that's the main feedback is we should see some loading spinners. And hello, Cedric. You typed the command wrong, but hello. And I'm curious, does this image not load dynamically, or do they all just have the same default image? Yeah, this is the default avatar. Okay. Cool. So this looks great. When I have some time after work, I'm gonna add some comments in terms of like UI feedback. Actually, I'll just ask that. Looks great. Would you like some UI UX feedback? Or a code review? Because I'm not going to give you feedback if you don't want it, and I'm not going to give you a code review if you don't want it. But let me know, and I will. Okay, that's all I have time for. I'm sorry, everyone else. I wasn't able to do it live. I'll try to do one of these at least once a week. And like I said, when I'm not streaming, I'm going to give feedback as well. And actually, I can add some. Wait, not on that one. Oh, I skipped watch it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to skip watch it. I'm sorry. Let's see. Finish the first designs, and I'm working on finishing the code. Okay. You can see the first version on GitHub pages. Watch it. This looks cool too. You all are great web developers. Look how cool this looks. We can go to the app. What if we search for Star Wars? We get some Star Wars results. Nice little hover effect. If I say seen it, does that work? My list? Okay, I guess they're still working on that, or it hasn't been deployed yet. But that looks great. Cool. All right, I gotta go. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Sorry if you asked any questions and I didn't get to them, but this was a very long review. But we did get to create some checklists. Let's make sure my links work. You can look at the code review checklist. That works. You can look at the UI review checklist. That works. Wonderful. Like I said, this evening, I'm gonna spend some time responding to everyone that needs a response. And this is super fun. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I guess we should try to raid somebody. Let's see who's streaming on Twitch. So if you're watching on YouTube, head on over to twitch.tv/codinggarden. And we are going to, we're gonna do a raid, a good old fashioned raid. Can I hide a message like this? No. I'm not hiding all commands. I'm only hiding the drop commands. And there were some Twitch follows. Thanks for the follow, Philippe. Thanks for the follow, Tessel. And thanks for the follow, Fuzzy. Welcome to the stream. We are leaving now, though. Oh, I need to change my sound output. You shouldn't feel bad, Infi, but those sites are really good. I'm curious if they wrote everything from scratch or if they're using some like pre-existing styles, but you're right. Like, I think most of the ones we looked at aren't using a CSS framework. They're writing it from scratch, and they look really good. Really good. Really good. Okay. Let's find someone streaming in science and technology. Hello, SB98. I live in Denver, Colorado. Let's see. Going way down. Way down. Yeah, I don't think I've seen Infies yet. Let's just see Infies, because they're in the chat. I always say I'm gonna go, and then I never go. I gotta go. Let's Bebo. Where'd it go? It should have the moderator badge. Shouldn't it? There it is. I think, yeah, this is MP. Pretty much done. Let's take a look. Country lookup. Get information about a country without encyclopedia. Infi, this looks perfectly fine. This looks great. Like, it's like, I like your color choice. I'm guessing this is like the default info color from Bulma, but I think it looks totally fine. Let's look up the United States of America. Search. There we go. I love it. We've got some nice responsiveness there. So cool. Yeah. Do not be ashamed. This looks perfectly fine. Yeah, it looks great. Cool. All right. Who are we going to raid? Code Rush is streaming. Brian Lagunas is learning Vue.js. Let's go over there. Are they on the Live Coders team? Yeah, they're on the Live Coders team too. Cool. So anyone that is on YouTube, head on over to Twitch, to twitch.tv/codinggarden. Yeah, I'll let you know. So a raid is when we take all the viewers of one stream and we put them into another stream. We're basically just sharing the love. So we're going to go raid Brian Lagunas. He's learning Vue.js. So if any of you know Vue.js, you can help him out, or you can learn along with him. So that's going to be fun. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Heck, for being on the chopping block. Hopefully my feedback wasn't too harsh. And hopefully anyone else that's watching, all the things I talk about are helpful when you're reviewing your own code. This was super fun. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks for the patron pledge. I forget who it was, but somebody pledged and I appreciate you. Don't do that. Thanks for the follow, Gorgat. All right, are we ready? Let's... Oh, wait. Before we do that... well, actually, we'll get that in action. But this is our raid message. So what we're going to do is when we raid their channel, everyone should copy and paste this message. And we're going to put that message in the channel. We're going to show lots of love. It's going to be great. Thank you, Alka. Alrighty, everyone. Wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night. And until next time, here's this.